Let's get few basics correct. So we'll go to shading mode. So this is where we are going to give our materials now and the different effects. This right side is called a shader editor and the left side will see the effect. Left side is basically the material preview mode and render mode. So in material preview mode we have this HDRI. This HDRI are basically the images which will have the natural lighting of that particular environment. So if I bring down the blur, you can see this is the jungle sort of environment that we have, and we have few pre-installed HDRIs in the material preview mode. You can choose any one of them or you can even download it from the internet, which is available for free. So let's start giving it a material. We'll select the sphere and we'll add new. The moment we add new, we'll have this material name here on the top and we'll have principal BDSF and this output. So let's explore this. This is the same principal BDSF that we give in the material. So if I remove the nodes here, which is that string, you'll see nothing is happening. Only if I add it, I'll see some effect here. It is showing white wall because the color is white. So if I change the color, I can directly change any color from here. So let's go with the green one. And if we come down here, we have metallic option. So if we increase the metallic, this ball will have much more metallic effect. This effect can be enhanced by removing the roughness. So as you can see, if I remove the roughness, you will have much more metallic effect in this ball. But if I increase the roughness, the metallic effect will go, and roughness means the light won't reflect much. So we can always play with the values of roughness and metallic to give a certain material to the color. If you come down, you see IOR. IOR is basically a number given to the glasses and different material, and in the emission we have directly color from here that you have already seen. So just play with this basic settings first before moving further. Okay, let's see what is the meaning of specular. So if I increase the value specular, you can see this white shiny surface. That is because of the light. If I put it to 0, you can see it will just go away. If I increase the metallic value, you will see it much more clearly. So we generally use the combination of metallic value and specular value to give a material more realistic effect. If you put roughness to 0, you'll see this is just a white square. We are in material preview mode now and we'll see the meaning of transmission. So I'm putting roughness to 0. Transmission means how much light can pass through the object. Basically it will give glassy effect. So if I put transmission to full, you can see this glassy effect. We can see through the object. So if you need any glassy material, you can use the transmission, roughness, metallic value for your advantage. So I have this object and I have added a principal BDSF to this object. I'm going to show you what is anisotropy, but let's increase the metallic content. So metallic value is full here now, and as you can see, if the light falls on this, if I increase the anisotropy, which is below roughness, let's give it a value. Let's give it a value of 0.7. So if you do that, you can see some sort of shininess here on the top surface, which looks much more realistic in nature. So you must have seen this. And this anisotropy rotation is basically we can rotate this. Let me add some color so that it will be much more clearer to you. Black isn't a good option, so let me give it a red color. And as you can see, it is looking much more like a metallic color which was cut from here. And anisotropic rotation basically will rotate this shiny effect. So if I rotate it with some value, you can see it is showing this way. Let's add a wave texture now. Go to add texture and wave texture. We'll directly connect it with the principal BDSF base color, and you can see, as the name suggests, it will just give waves to the object. Within this wave texture we'll have few, let's call it as patterns. So we have different sort of patterns, and within those patterns we'll have scale, distortion, details scale size, or details roughness, and face off. So you can just test it. So with every value you'll have some sort of changes in the texture. So just play with this value. With a change of distortion and roughness, we can have this sort of effect. Select the monkey, go to modifier, and let's add wireframe modifier. So as you can see, we can increase the frame from here and the thickness 0.05. So it will give some thickness. Let's apply the modifier now. Let's give it a material. Go to materials tab, add new, and in the principal BDSF we'll select emissions. In the emissions, let's select the color to red, somewhere here. We'll go to render mode so that we'll have the effect. As you can see, it's glowing a little bit. Increase the strength to 5. Let's go back to render properties, and under that select bloom. As you can see, it's shining now. The bloom will change the color as well, so it will have reddish glowing effect. Let's increase the intensity also a little bit. Now this world property is little grayish, so we'll go to world property and bring it down to the black, so we'll have the effect of bloom much more. So as you can see, let me switch off few of the viewport, and as you can see, this is the glowing effect. You can give this to any material. There are few more examples that I have drawn. So as you can see, in this sphere I have used wireframe, but it is not limited to wireframe. You can do without wireframe as well. So I have added color ramp, which will give the gradient sort of color to the object, and I am adding texture coordinate. Texture coordinate will basically defines how an image will project on the or mapped on the geometry. So if you move the slider of the color ramp, you can see the changes in the color. We can also add different sort of colors. We just need to click the bar here and we can change the color. We can add the points and we can have two different sort of colors like this, green and yellow. As you can see, we can also add more points to it and we can give more colors to it. Here colors will have gradient sort of effect, so it won't be like very solid until unless we move this slider very close to each other like this. So if we move it very close to each other, we'll have solid, we can easily see the two different color. But if we move them little apart, and so we'll have a gradient sort of effect. And between this color we can add a different color in between them as a gradient. So for example, I have given blue color here. Go to add, go to texture, and then add brick texture. So just connect this brick texture to the main principal BDSF, and you can see there is a pre-installed brick texture available. You can change the color, you can change the color of the bricks, and you can also change the color of mortar. Now you can play with other settings like offset. You can also change squash, you can change frequency, you can change scale, and there are few more options available. So this is the brick texture for you. Similarly, if you go to add texture and checker, we have checker texture. Connect to the principal BDSF and we will have texture like this. Here also you have option to change the colors, so you can basically change these two colors and play with it. Again, we have scale option here. Like the wave texture we seen last time, we have Voronoi texture, but this is something different. So we'll connect it to the base color of the principal BDSF, and within this we have so many option to change like 1D, 2D, 3D and 4D. We'll have this sort of effects, and within those also we have few more options, and each one will give some sort of effect to the texture, but all of them will have scale and randomness. So we can play with the scale and randomness in all of the options above, so just play with them. Let's add a mix RGB node. Basically, mix RGB node, as the name suggests, it will mix two input and it will give a certain output. So we'll look into this. Although we can change the color, we can directly add color also. So, and there are many options of the type of mix, but let's put it to use. I have connected Voronoi texture to mix, and another noise texture also I'll connect to the mix. So it is taking input from noise texture and Voronoi texture, and it is giving the output, and we can change the factor value. At the same time, we can change the scale, detail, roughness value of the noise texture and Voronoi texture as well. Basically, noise texture will send some input to the mix, and Voronoi texture will send some input to the mix, and then it will go to the color ramp and it will go to principal BDSF, and then it will come as an output. And we are not limited to just one mix, we can add two mix as well. So as you can see, I have added one more mix between the Voronoi texture, and I can also add one more noise. So like this, I'm going to shift D the noise and I'm going to add it here, and I'm going to connect it with the mix. So at the end you will have some final value like this. Now you have so much values to change, like there are noise texture, Voronoi texture, and each one of them have strength, distortion value, distance value. You can just play with this and you can come up with different materials like this. Let's see what a noise texture can do. We'll connect the noise texture with the base color of the principal BDSF, and you can see there are different varieties of noise patterns. So under this you have 1D, 2D, 3D and 4D. So you can choose one of them, and each one have scale, detail, roughness and also the distortion. All this value will have a combined effect. We can also choose to connect the noise texture with different properties of principal BDSF. So for example, I have connected this time to the metallic, and if I change the scale, you see there is a change in the ball. If I change the scale, if I change the detail or roughness, this ball will have some effect. Basically this is the noise pattern that is showing up with respect to color. Let's connect the noise texture to something else. Let's connect to the emission. So this will give a very visual effect. As you can see, the noise is playing very well here with the combination of white and red color, but we can change the intensity and we can also change the scale and other properties. Let's connect it with the roughness, and roughness is also playing out as per the noise texture. Now let's see what a bump can do. We'll add a bump node here. So bump basically have strength and distance. The normal of bump can be connected with the normal of principal BDSF here like this, and this color ramp we can directly connect with the bump height. So if we connect with the height, suddenly you see our material has come alive. You see some sort of roughness or some sort of height value. It is no more looking like a plain material. Now you can change the strength and the distance. So if you change it, you will see different sort of effect. So feel free to play with it. We have this previous textures as well. There is an option of inverse in the bump node, which basically invert the effect of the bump. So basically it will reverse the effect. Let's add a mix shader node and an emission shader node. We can connect both of them like this, and we can change the emission color directly from here. So let's give it a bluish color, and now let's add a color ramp and a layer weight node. So these two will come on the top like this. Layer weight is very important in this case. This is the new thing that we are adding. So let's connect color ramp to mix shader and this layer weight to the color ramp. So as you can see this effect, this is being provided by the layer weight. We can change the value of layer weight to 0.3, let's say 0.3, and you can play with the color slider of the color ramp just like this. So as you slide, you can see the changes in the monkey. And within the color ramp we have other options also. So from linear we can go to B-spline and other option. Let's keep linear for now and go to render mode, and as you can see with the black background, you can see this sort of effect. And the good part is, once we are done, we can go back to the emission and we can change these colors. So once we are done with the basic setup, now we can change any color and you can have this sort of effect. So we have a texture coordinate here and a color ramp already connected as usual. We are going to add a noise texture this time. So noise texture is sort of a texture which will have different patterns within it, and we'll try to connect it with the base color of principal BDSF. If we directly connect this with the principal BDSF, you can see the kind of texture that it has. So you can see in our material, and within this we have scale, detail, roughness and distortion that we can change, but this is the pattern. But this won't work until unless we add color ramp to it. So we'll add color ramp, and now you will see this will take effect with the combination of these two colors, the green one and the pink one. Now if you want to make changes, we can just change the value of scale, detail, roughness of the noise texture, and we'll have different sort of effect like this. Now let's connect the texture coordinate also along with this. So the moment you do this, we'll have some sort of input from the texture coordinate as well, and it will have some sort of change in pattern. We can do a lot with this, and we can play with the color ramp for now. I have this coffee mug and I am in shading mode right now, so we'll add a new material to it. We'll also add an image texture here. Connect this with base color and add a new. To the width and height, give it 2048 pixels, and we'll change the color to white, although we can choose any color. Hit OK. Now let's go back to the modeling. From the top left corner we can go to the texture paint mode at the bottom, and now this is the texture paint mode. At the bottom we can add new texture and we can open the image that we want to paint on, and this is the logo that we are going to paint on our coffee mug. So if you come down, there are so many options. Let's just hit N. In the tools, if you come down, you'll see texture and we have this logo, and move the mapping to stencils. The moment you do that, we'll have this brush. If you do the right click, you can grab it, control right click to rotate, shift right click to scale, and left click to paint. So we'll just size it down to our requirement, and once you are happy with the location, you can just paint it with left click. And as you can see, we have basically painted our logo on the top of coffee mug. So this is one of the simple method that you can use to paint the texture on any object. Let's add an image texture. Go to add, go to texture and add an image texture. So in the image texture you can add any image. You can download from the internet and you can add it. So I have added one texture and I'm going to connect it with the base color of Principal BDSF, and as you can see, the moment I connect, this was the image that I downloaded from internet and I have connected it here. And there are few more options here within the image texture which will give different sort of effect. You can play around with this and depending upon your requirement you can choose one. Under this we have other options which will give different effects. Let's add a color ramp now. So go to add, go to converter and add color ramp. Color ramp actually map the values of the color using the gradient here. Just think that it gives color. So it have this slider. We have two values that we can give, and with practice it will become clearer. Let's add new to this plane, and we're going to add a color ramp now, and along with color ramp we'll add Voronoi texture, and let's just simply connect all this. Now press Ctrl T to get mapping and texture coordinate. This can happen if you have Node Wrangler add-on on. We'll connect object with the vector this time now. In the Voronoi texture, select distance to edge. So if you do that, you'll see this sort of effect, the rocky sort of effect. We'll add a bump to give some sort of height. We'll connect the Voronoi texture with the height and normal to the normal of Principal BDSF, and you can see already it is having some sort of rocky effect. Under the Voronoi texture, we can always play with the scale and randomness. So if we change the randomness, it will behave like this. As you can see, with every randomness value, it will give some sort of result. And you can also change few of the texture in the Voronoi. F1, F2, we have few options available already here, which will give different sort of results here. Once you are happy, you can add light, and you can see this in render mode like this. Let's add new, the Principal BDSF. We have a bump here, noise texture, mapping and texture coordinate. Connect noise texture with the bump height and increase the metallic value in Principal BDSF. Let's connect the mapping to the noise texture and texture coordinate with the mapping. Now we can play with the strength of bump, and we can also play with the details level in the noise texture. As you can see, there is a change in our metallic ball. Now let's add a color ramp. Connect it like this between bump and noise texture. And now if you play with this slider, you can see there is on the surface you will have this sort of effect, more shiny sort of effect. So let's do Shift D and add one more color ramp, which will be connected directly to the Principal BDSF. And now if you play with the slider, let's change the color a little bit. Let's give it a reddish color so you'll know what I mean. So if I just move the slider, we can add more points to it and we can add more colors. Now let's add the noise texture again to the color ramp here like this, and you can see there will be combination of both the color ramps. So now if you move the slider, you'll see the effect. Only in the rough surface you will have the color, and if you move the slider, the white one, you can have a different color. Although you can play with colors, it is completely up to you. So now you are free to play with the slider and we can do the changes here. We'll have the same basic connection this time. We'll have a color ramp, we'll have mapping, texture coordinate, and we'll simply connect it. The only difference is a new texture called as Musgrave texture. So we'll put it between the color ramp and mapping. We will connect this as usual like we did last time, and again this also have many different sort of patterns within itself, which we can check one by one, and within them we'll have scale, detail, dimension. Let's add a bump node here. So bump will be a game changer now. So let's remove the bump and we'll bring it here itself. We'll connect the normal of bump to the normal of principal BDSF, and we'll connect the Musgrave texture directly to the color ramp, and also with the height of bump node. So as you can see, we are getting this sort of effect. It is looking like moon with some rough surface. We can always play with the strength and the distance of bump to make it more realistic, and we can also do the inverse, but we can also play with the color ramp. As you can see, we even have option to experiment with the mapping, the scale of it. So with different scale value we'll have different outcome, as you can see it here. So this look like a moon surface, but you can play with different colors. Delete the principal BDSF and add emission, wave texture and color ramp. Let's connect them now and we'll have this sort of basic effect. Now in the wave texture we have scale, distortion, detail roughness and phase. We can play with different numbers and we'll get this sort of wavy form. We can also change the color in the color ramp. We'll have two colors. We'll go with blue and white this time. Under render properties, switch on the bloom. So we'll have this shiny glowing effect and we can play with this number. We'll be creating the animation for this energy ball, so I want you to please switch on your timeline, the keyframe timeline. So we'll put some value of phase offset under the wave texture on in frame 1. We'll press I. So in the frame 1 phase offset is 1, and in frame 250 we have phase offset as 16. And we can insert the frame by pressing I, and if we press the space bar we'll see the energy ball glowing like this. We still has option to change the color in the color ramp, and once we are happy we can see the animation. We can also change this wave texture with the phase offset again, and there are different wave options available in under the wave texture as well. So we'll change the different sort of waves as well, like this. Let's give wood color to this monkey. We'll connect the color ramp to the principal BDSF and we'll give two different colors. One will be light brown, another will be dark brown. So at the two extreme of this color ramp we'll give light brown and dark brown. Now let's add a noise texture and connect it with the color ramp and press Ctrl T so that we can automatically get mapping and texture coordinate. Put details to 16, roughness to 0.7, and let's change little bit of distortion also to, let's say, 0.7. So if you zoom in, still it is not visible. Basically the dark brown should be visible. So if you slide this in the color ramp, you'll see little bit of the distortion. You can change the scale in the noise texture to get that. In the mapping, change the scale value of X, Y and Z and see what works for you. We'll go with X axis and we'll put the value to 8 and Y and Z as 1 and 1. So in order to show this effect, we'll add a bump node. We'll connect noise texture with the bump height and the bump node with the principal BDSF at the normal. And we can change the strength of the bump to our requirement. And as you can see, we have this wood effect on our monkey head. You are free to play with the strength of noise texture and strength of bump to get what you desire for. And right now we are in material preview mode. We'll go to render mode and we'll see this effect in the render mode. Okay, we have bump, we have noise texture, we have mapping and texture coordinate. We'll add a mix shader and we'll add between the principal BDSF and output. We'll also add an emission, so to give a glowing effect. Let's give a red emission and we'll connect with the mix shader. Emission strength will be 10, and under the render properties we'll switch on the bloom, we'll increase the intensity, we'll change the color to red. Now the magic will happen. We'll connect bump with the principal BDSF. We'll add a color ramp also. We'll add color ramp to the mix shader. Let's connect noise texture to the color ramp. And now if you move the slider of the color ramp, you'll see this sort of effect. Let's connect mapping and texture coordinate as well with the noise texture, and connect the object of texture coordinate with the mapping. Let's connect noise texture with the height of bump, and now you'll see the bump effect. And now we are free to play with the value of noise texture, which is scale, detail, roughness and distortion. Let's change emission to little orangish to make it look much more realistic. Let's duplicate the noise texture and add upon the noise texture. So basically this will be a layer of 2 noise textures. And now all you need to do is to play with the slider of color ramp. So once you are happy, you can stop, and this is our Rocky which have lava effect. Let's see how to apply a simple texture on this plane. We already have principal BDSF, and as you can see I have downloaded few texture. I'll simply grab the image and I'll put it here. So you can see it has already converted in the form of image texture. Let's connect this with the principal BDSF base color, and as you can see some sort of texture here. We'll add a bump node here to get some sort of height sort of effect, some roughness, visible roughness. So we'll just connect the normal with the normal of the principal BDSF, and this color will connect with the height of bump node. So as you can see, now we can see this height or the roughness, and if we increase and decrease the strength of the bump node, we can see the changes in our texture. So once you are happy, you can come up with a number and you can stop at the bump node. We have distortion also, details also, but you can also change the values in the principal BDSF and also in the image texture. So we have so many options available, but this is the basic. You can download free textures from internet and experiment with different objects. This is one of the simplest way to add color even in the object mode. So I'm going to connect this image texture with the principal BDSF. I'm going to show what was the image. So I'm going to split the screen and I'm going to use UV editing option. So in the UV editing, you see this image. This was the image that I put in our texture, image texture. Select entire cube in edit mode, go to the left side in UV editing, press S0. So basically we have scaled it to 0, and now if you put enter and you grab it with G, and if you move it, you will have this color. So right now that small point you might not be able to see it, it's very small. So wherever you move, you will have this color. So right now I have put it in yellow, and in the render mode, as you can see, it is colored now. Let's do it again. In edit mode, select the entire cube, go to the left side, grab this orange dot with G, and you move it on any color. So right now it's on blue. So now if you go to render mode, you can see it's blue. I learned this technique from Infanzia. Basically it's very pretty simple, and we can use this sort of technique in low poly modeling. And the good thing about this technique is even in the object mode we can see the color, and I use this technique pretty often. And I'll give you one example. As you can see this chessboard, I gave the color, it was very faster that way through this technique. So you can give it a try. We have color ramp, noise texture, texture coordinate, and principal BDSF. We'll add Voronoi texture. So Voronoi texture is one of the most popular texture. The moment we plug it in the color ramp, you can see different sort of patterns. We have so many options available. We can play with the color ramp, and as you can see, the change in scale and distortion value will give this sort of changes in the Voronoi texture. Let's go one step ahead and mix the texture coordinate with the Voronoi texture, and you can see I have added UV of the texture coordinate with the Voronoi texture, and you can see this sort of pattern. And with the help of color ramp, we can even do much more with this. As a beginner, feel free to test the scale and distortion value and exponential value of this thing. You can see you can easily create such sort of materials. Once you get a hang of it, you'll know when to use which one. So this sort of effect we can create with Voronoi.